everyone, it's Maria from J'adore le papier. It's been at least 3, maybe 4 months, and it's been quite the summer. But short story, a bus accident, death in the family, and everything in between, I am still here and still at the hotel. So anyway, I just wanted to come on and do a quick flip through of a journal, open spine or open bound journal for my niece. She's turning 1 next month. It's almost finished. I haven't done all of the stitching, but I thought I would come on and do it while the sun was shining. A big thank you to everyone who's influenced me in my journal making. This design is actually, or this concept is one that I have wanted from Jibid Neary forever. She came out in 2019 of this open spine journal. It was green and she called it the Dyer's daughter. And when I saw it a couple years ago, I knew I wanted it, but of course I think it was sold immediately or before. And so I made one of my own for my niece using this antique book cover for the back. It actually looks good from the back. You'll even see pieces from journals that I've purchased from you, like from Luna Rosu and my old Barton Door, Diane with my old Barton Door, digitals from Ruby and Pearl XO, ideas from Heather at Rose Hill Paper Cottage. This little book cover I believe is from Jacqueline at Souvenir de la France. I ordered some book covers from her and I think she included this one. It's The Residence of the Yellow House, I think is what it translates to, and it's covered with fabrics from the UK. I purchased from Vintage Linen Pantry, Charisse. She's in the UK, and I told her I was building this for my niece, and so she included wallpapers and fabrics and some vintage trims in her package for me, so that was really sweet. Magnetized. I've been watching a lot of Heather from Rose Hill Paper Cottage's tutorial, but I took this organic silk bag and filled it with a little card for my niece. It has her initials on there, and I just painted and sketched her a little forget-me-not, and she can write on the back this book belongs to. And then I added some stamps in the color of the book colors, which are pink, green, and light green, as you noticed on the back cover. And I just magnetized it to the front, and that'll be her little book plate. Since this is built and designed after her A Dyer's Daughter journal, which I'll link below, she does some hand crochet on paper or hand embroidery, and you'll see this scene actually as one of the vintage cards in the book. So there's a reason behind these colors. It's Chatterbox, and even though this isn't a little girl, I think it's actually a little baby boy because it says Papa on the back there. His bangs, or her bangs, are too cute, and I had bangs like that when I was little. And this is another French mom and baby that I received from Catherine at French Bayadou. It has a floating fabric envelope that was also made by Charisse, the Vintage Linen Pantry. She knew I was doing this for my niece, so she included some vintage papers in here, and I've got a little note for my niece that I'll write on there in a vintage book page in my books. So hopefully she can do that in here. This first pocket is made of wallpaper from, I think this one must have been from this is from Donna Morgan, 4171 on Instagram, part of the Happy Mail she sent me, and I've started to cover it with vintage and antique French laces and trims from Catherine, and probably also Sam Poole, the little Happy Mails they sent me. And this little French pin is actually from Sam Poole as well. I thought I would share. But in this little pocket is just, for now at least, a little French ephemera in case my niece wants a little crocheted outfit with her little culotte. Make sure I'm in focus here. To Megan, my niece's mom, if it's hard to turn, just turn these little, what do you call these? Binder clips here a little bit, because papers have a hard time going through the whole thing. So just turn it a little bit. But here's a little bit of French ephemera from magazines on baby outfits and some things you can crochet, and a little baby chicken poulet for baby for a bib. And I think I get these from Marie or Kay's Vintage or from Mihab in France, because they usually like to wrap my things in French newspapers, and these just happen to have little baby notes, so I've been actually saving these for about 3 years. On this side is a French baby announcement for a little baby boy. I got that from Mina, French Riviera, I think. And a little baby French book page. I think these are also from Jacqueline. And G, first letter of my niece's name. And of course some magazine cutouts, again, French magazine cutouts that I've been saving for 2 or 3 years now. I didn't know for who, but turns out for my niece. And this is a little bit of art paper mixed media from Donna Morgan that she shared. It's a really hard, thick art paper, or maybe even watercolor paper. And I like that since it's holding a lot of ephemera here. Okay, I'm back. I had to do a quick battery change already. Some buttons in the middle here just to make sure that the middle of the book was just as wide or tall as the new alligator mouth. So that just evens out some of the pages. Turn here, and even though the colors of the book or the journal are greens and pinks, this Norwegian book page or a magazine page and this little girl in her blue bonnet was too cute not to include. And it's funny because it actually talks about the troubles of old people, the problems they'll have. So one day, but anyway, it includes this vintage Name Your Baby, Care of Baby pamphlet. Let me see, make sure this is focusing. And actually goes through boys and girls' names and how to change diapers and bathe your baby. It's funny because the name Maria actually means something like, where is it? Mary, bitterness. Huh. I guess this isn't based on anything from the Bible. It's kind of funny. But there is a little caveat in the beginning here. It says not to take the names too seriously or the meanings of the name too seriously. But more or less how it sounds and how it fits the child. Anyway, I got this from eBay, and then of course a antique or vintage chocolate advertisement from France. This little baby in her blues, in her rattle, and then thanks to Rural Retro, she had this Instagram sale of a sewer's kit, which included these vintage French and British trims, which happened to match the book cover or back cover. And one of the persons who purchased these buttons, authentic buttons from her, made in England, was willing to give one up to me. So thank you, whoever bought those. Some French fabric is just little pocket tucks up in here. And then that fits right in there. And this magazine, it's actually kind of fun to translate it. But it basically is in Norwegian. It's glued down just so that it doesn't fly around too much, but you can still read the articles. And then it's actually attached to this linen fabric that has an Asian scene on it, because I mentioned that my niece is Eurasian. And so not only Norwegian and French, but here's a little nod to her Asian background. It's real retro, just some British threads. I just like the green, because on this page you'll notice it's the blues and teals. And this actually came from a journal I purchased from Luna Rosu. But I like it because on this antique book page, or first book page, I made into a pocket with this perfect blue. And it came from a book called, I don't remember. I might see the title later in the book. But anyway, I made this into a pocket and put little fabric and some journaling cards in there from one of Ruby and Pearl XO's digital kits. So this is a pocket. And she put pockets in here for ephemera. So this is original to Luna, Sheena from Luna Rosa, a little French prayer card, perfect green. And I think this baby picture actually came from Honeybee Mill Books. I was purchasing pictures for one of my altered books that I'll be making for Laura Ingalls Wilder, and that was supposed to be Baby Rose, but that vintage picture or antique picture is too cute. And then I have an antique Victorian calling card with a baby on it. It's actually a boy's name, George, but the baby's just too cute, so I included that in the pocket. Le Chien, a dog, a little playing card for a dog. French playing card from Mia, a brown paper parcel, as well as my niece's letter name. And this actually also came from a more recent order on Etsy. I'll have to list her. And then I think this one came from the original packet that Luna Rosu made. She just took an altered envelope, put the little pocket die cut here and sewed it down. But the reason I really wanted it was to include these cardstock background papers that she made into a matchbook, so that my niece's mom can maybe add this as background paper to some of the notes that my niece will be writing or scribbling throughout the pages. I did magnetize it, and I hit it with some French fabric here, just so that it doesn't fly out of the book too much, since it's an open spine, open concept book. Hid the magnets there. Again, I was watching a lot from Heather of Rose Hill Paper Cottage. Again, I was watching a lot. This is an over-the-page magnet bookmark. I was watching Heather Rose Hill Paper Cottage's Ruby and Pearl design team video, where she was making these tuck bookmarks and putting a combination of antique French. This is antique French wallpaper from Heather at Ruby and Pearl XO, and it's embossed with a little bit of gold paint as well. One of my last few pieces, perfectly green with her vintage. I don't know if this is her mother kit, or I'll have to figure out which kit, because I've purchased like 10 kits from her. Backed with some British ledger paper, a little bit of vintage or antique lace from Sam Poole. Backed it with ledger, and then I made it into a magnet. Originally it was just going to be a bow bookmark, but then I magnetized it, and there's a little bit of my tape, British tape, just so it could go anywhere in the book. And some vintage book pages from a children's book. I just trimmed it with some lace from, I think this lace actually comes from the vintage linen pantry box of linens and wallpaper she gave me for my niece's journal. And then that little charm actually kept those ribbons together. Another Ruby and Pearl digital. I think these are from her antique botanicals. And this flower and vegetable seed digital from her, as well as this one here. I wonder if it's from the Dear Mother collection or Green Gardens. I don't remember. It's just printed to some coffee stained paper. I thought that was a little cute piece, and my niece can journal or draw or write or scribble on any of this. And then I have a piece of antique French paper here. There's the back of that magnet. Because the script was just so beautiful, it looked really good with Heather's botanical prints. Skinny, it doesn't show the full shape of the star, but my niece can write on the back, or her mom can write on the back, journal a little bit there. Or replace it. And then just some note pages from a Grand Magazine du Louvre that I purchased, plus this cute little love paper clip that I got from, is it Liz? I think I just found her through Cassie's channel. She did an unboxing this month that she's had for a while. I'll be sure to link her below, because I did get a lot of the ephemera from her authentic French pages. But this actually on the inside has a month from my niece's birthday month, October, and of course a lot of journaling. And if her mom removes this actually opens up to a full page spread. So there's a lot of journaling and memories in there. And this is a book plate from that same children's book with the blue end page that I have. It's just so sweet. It says, "Oh, what will Mama say?" They woke up to took a nap in a cave, I think. Nearly antique book pages. It's really super thick. And then I just lined it with a little bit of vintage linen fabric from the UK, so that I wouldn't have to add page savers to all of these holes that I punched. On the back is actually a floating pocket from Dyer at my old barn door that I repurposed because I don't have my embosser at the hotel. It's in my storage. And I love the little fabric, and it's embossed. And so on the back, I made it a double pocket lined with French fabric from Catherine at French Billet Doux and a French postcard from Mina in Nice, France. And then on the front, I just put these two antique trading cards or advertisement cards from this first one is an American company, Clark Spool Cotton trading card. And then because my niece and nephew actually have a dog, this one is supposed to be like their puppy, and actually I think those are her colors, or maybe black and white. But this one is a vintage or nearly antique postcard as well. You know, with this open concept journal, things might come flying out. So anyway, this is another one of Ruby and Pearl Exo's botanical images from the same kit as the previous page. My all-time favorite polka dot Swiss fabric. It fell on top of this page and I just love the effect of it. I think these are forget-me-not flowers, but this is another envelope from Sheena Luna Rosu from one of her kits, her journals that I purchased in the past. And I love this fabric cluster and her signature, what do you call this thing? Sequin, and her French ephemera on the envelope that she made. But what I did was I went ahead and magnetized it so that it could be used as a bookmark anywhere. And when it was next to the forget-me-nots, the purple on the lavender forget-me-not or light blue actually looked really good. It almost looked like one of the flowers. Norwegian cigarette cards, or are these the British ones? I think these are the British ones from Kay's Vintage Flowers, or Kay's Vintage Ephemera. Oh yeah, because I got the idea for doing the embroidery that Jibid had done for her Dyer's Daughter book cover, and it's actually a field of these white and pink flowers. I have it on the edge, almost like a bookmark. And here, actually some things are falling off. I meant to clip this, is some vintage linen, also from Rural Retro, the same kit, sewing kit that I bought from her. I just love this fabric. Pockets and pages. This is also from the heirloom box from Vintage Linen Pantry. She made a floating pocket that I filled with some French and British ephemera, but her pocket had this poem or this book page called My Playmate. And this vintage or antique now photograph is from Miab, a brown paper parcel, 1935, French kids rowing. And so definitely my niece, her cousins, and her brother are in there. It was pre-ruffled. And she backed it on some linen cardstock with a bow, matching bow tag. And it had this party game scorecard in there as well. And then I love the pinks of it, so I grabbed one of the journal cards from my old barn doors journal that I recently purchased from her and threw that in there. And a French playing card from Miab, one of her children's book kits, card for a photographer. At first I thought those were dogs, but they're goats. And the ad is actually for a photographer talking about real goats are better, but what better way to capture a moment than with her photography. I think it's Riccati's album photography. But you can translate that using Google Translate. It's kind of fun. Norwegian, again, vintage, and then there's a photo of the children. Well, and this can almost become her baby scrapbook. And then from Heather of Rose Hill Paper Cottage, her tabs video, where she just does a bunch of bookmark tabs. I actually love this fabric. It's a vintage fabric, linen fabric, I think from France. I don't remember now. And I backed it with cardstock to make it the tuck. And then I put this vintage French receipt portion of it just because I love the paper. It's so thick, and also the handwriting, the calligraphy on there. And then of course, if you watch Heather's tutorial, she uses a lot of tickets, including tickets she made. I think I got from Denise's shop. I'll link her below as well. And then there's the original tag from that layaway card. Oh, it's backed with Ruby and Pearl's digital kit. I think it's her Bohemian kit. I love the raspberries in there. Like nothing flies as she's turning. And then it's backed with Braille paper that I received also from Norway, or from the Netherlands. The same seller that have the Norwegian ads and Norwegian cards in here. Make sure it's still in. And this is one of Ruby and Pearl's digital items, I think from her ledger kit, but it's just a French letter, or maybe it's the By the Sea. It's one of her kits, and it's just a French letter. It's a blue-green, so I just loved how it looked in this layout. She can replace this with, you know, maybe a report card from my niece or something, first day of preschool. Another one of the botanical digital collages from Ruby and Pearl XO, and I did a little bit of a French cluster on here, little scraps of French paper that were too brittle, so I just stapled it on there, and then I used Sam Poole's vintage stamps just to number the botanical plates, and I put a couple more pieces of ephemera and lots of paper in here for scribbling. A vintage or 1911, so antique check, because it's a little bit of a green color, so I liked how it looked on this layout. Some children's writing paper on newspaper print so that my niece can write, and another digital page from Ruby and Pearl XO's digitals journal that I bought from her. But I added the little photograph of this brother and sister, and look at the little girl. She's like, oh my God, why? So I think this came from Donna Morgan. Anyway, on the inside, she just did a little bit of embossing, and I love that. Again, most of my stuff is in storage, and so I wasn't able to make everything for my niece, but I shared all my favorite pieces from other journals. And this bow, this string bow just really belongs in this journal, I think. And I put some ephemera in here, a photo from Ruby and Pearl XO's digital kit. It's a little girl, little baby, probably a French baby. And then this came from Sheena, one of the last official ephemera that was included here. But I love the blues. Look at that stamp, and the blues from Ruby and Pearl's digital kit. And on the other side of this floating pocket is a layout with a combination of antique ephemera from France. These school children going to school. That's from Mina at La French Riviera. And this year, I don't remember what year this is, 1903. Their little lunch pails and books going to a petite school. Flashcards, theory of equations, and then algebraic language, so that my niece can come up with her mathematical answers, because by age 4, I'm sure she will know her times tables and her theory of equations. This is meant to be written, scribbled on, drawn, all these papers. That goes in there. This is technically a half tuck, so that it would be easy to tuck in. Some butterflies from the Green Garden of Ruby and Pearl XO, a flashcard with the word bird, a tall flashcard, and then the back pocket is actually an embossed envelope, also from my Old Barn Doors journal that I purchased from her. And on this inside is a vintage French check from 1923, purple, and then a little piece of the embossed paper from vintage linen pantry box. She had these antique papers with the most brittle but beautiful embossing, and I just embossed, I put it on one of these vintage or antique French envelopes that I got from Catherine at French Bijoux. So it is a full deep pocket all the way of the length of the page, and then one of the journal cards from Ruby and Pearl XO's digital Bohemian kit, I think, and I just backed it with sketch paper to give it some strength. And then on this side came from Jack's and the same kit as this ribbon from the UK. Slippers, baby gay slippers, fabric slippers. I actually want a pair. They look really comfy, but they're a little too small, size 5. So the actual pattern is on the inside here, Dipper. Everywhere. Let me turn that. On this side, floating khadi paper. So again, more sketch. And this is a full page so that if my niece or her mom wants to write her sketch, or her brother, she can actually take these pages out one at a time. Floating khadi paper, which is good for watercolor. And then this is the sweetest. A few of you might have seen this on my Instagram. Cutest little linen or cotton pocket square with this little bear who's smoking the pipe and pushing a wheelbarrow full of flowers with her little duck or her little goose. And the little forget-me-not flowers, the same flowers that I painted for my niece in the front. An old Beatrix Potter book page that I made into a floating pocket. It's actually not a full pocket, but a full belly band pocket. And of course, G is for girl, and G is the first letter of our name. And again, as you're turning these, Megan, just turn the ring if you need to, or just go slowly as you're turning the pages, just because it prefers to turn on the shorter bend of this coil. There's another page for her brother to fill out, and then another floating pocket or floating bookmark that's magnetized that I watched Heather make on her tutorial, so you'll hear the magnets, 2 of them. I didn't cover them fully just so that they knew they were magnets. The same company where the silk pocket in the front, they eco-dye their trims, and they have some of the most vibrant colors, which you'll see in my wine tasting journal that I'm making, and also my fabrics journal that I'm making. And it's again on some sketch paper, this tan sketch paper that I did trim down for this one, and then some vintage ledger carbon copy paper from London. Love their writing. That's the book, the back of that magnetic bookmark. Just folded over, and then I put some of the spare butterflies that I got from the Green Garden of Ruby and Pearl's kit, and some of the torn cotton paper that I have from this floating pocket up front. Antique French wallpaper from Ruby and Pearl XO. Some of the last pieces of the original wallpapers that she gifted me over a year ago now, I think, and some vintage French homework. And I love it because this little girl or boy with the most beautiful writing, this comes from Miyab, a brown paper parcel, drew flowers, and I just love the orange flower, picking up on the orange and browns of this Beatrix Potter page, as well as the browns or golds in the antique French wallpaper. Beatrix Potter book page, original book page to a chatterbox, an American chatterbox, and this little girl in her curly hair is just too cute. I made washi tapes using some vintage wallpaper from Rural Retro. No, this must be wallpaper from Donna Morgan from her gift, but I just love that little girl reading a book. And then some pink sari trim that I actually got from Ruby and Pearl XO that she wrapped my wallpapers with, I think. Captive cockatoo, and this little girl again in her curly hair. She's feeding the cockatoo some apples. I just put a little bit of a cluster here of some scrap papers that I had left over, but I just liked how they looked. There's that embossed antique paper from the heirloom box from Vintage Linen Pantry, a couple extra vintage or antique French envelopes in case her mom wants to write notes, a little bit of the book cover, front book cover page from that original book that I had towards the front, and some extra antique French script writing trims. some more wallpaper. Spring, Song of the Haymakers. Again, same book, Chatterbox book. Has a little baby girl right there, or boy. And on the back is another floating pocket from my old Barn Doors journal that I had, because it's embossed again with the butterflies, which you saw butterflies from Ruby and Pearl's kit. Khadi paper that my niece can draw or sketch on. Some pink wax paper. I'm not sure who gifted this or what package it was from, either from the UK, either from Rural Retro or maybe from Charisse's vintage linen pantry box that I got. And then this is actually some embossed or specialty paper that I just got here from Paper Source or Paper Zone, one of those. Or vintage 1959 advent calendar with a little baby, and a vintage or antique Russian button as well. These carved Russian buttons from Miab at a brown paper parcel are the best, and I think that's the last official one I have, so I thought I'd give it to my niece. Our antique book page, one of the thick ones. I just did a cluster of fabrics from Sam Poole, and one of her antique florets, and then a vintage button from Donna Morgan. And this is actually a vintage military linen or laundry pin for their military laundry. And I put it on here because it looks like a baby pin. In trading cards, like I had in the front, the authentic ones, but it's backed with some coffee dyed paper. And I thought it would be cute for my niece or somebody to write notes on. Getting ready for school is a full pattern. This came from Rural Retro in the UK. She's on Instagram, Rural Retro. It's not glued in there, but it's just paper clipped in there. It's a very tight pocket. I didn't want it flying out, but it does have the full pattern of this jacket, full instructions. And then I put a little bit of this eyelet trim in here as a pocket, inside the pocket, just so it could house some buttons. I don't think I glued these down, but they're stuck. Vintage British snaps. And then I thought I would share the same little vintage buttons and another floret from Sam Poole. The little happy mail she sent me, just in case she loses one. And then she can sew these little vintage British buttons throughout the book. I think one is a wooden button. This pocket is lined with French trim from Aline. Just tucks right in there, and then I didn't want it flying around, so it just has this copper paper clip. Another vintage music sheet, Rockabye Baby music page. And then I love the blues, picking up on the blue pattern and these little girls. Polly put the kettle on. Norwegian book pages, children's book pages. And it folds out like this. So it's got the book plates 33, 34, and the story's in Norwegian, but you can use Google Translate to translate it. It's kind of a fun story of a little bear being chased by giants. And then this is a vintage or nearly antique French postcard. Touraine, France. Just paper clipped on there. And I love this Norwegian book page, children's book page, really thick paper. So even if my niece and nephew decide to write on it, I think it'll be really sweet. And here's another set of the story, front and back. But this one does have a heavier floating magnetized pocket, floating pocket. So it's magnetic. I hid it in here, I think, somewhere. It's in there somewhere. And I lined it with vintage ledger paper scraps and some fabrics and some of my washi tape. Has this little boy in her and his dog. So that could be her brother. Look at the little boy, he's trying to make the little dog smile. It's so cute. And then a vintage British playing card, player's cigarettes with little animals. So this must have come from Kay's Vintage Ephemera, February. Coffee paper stained or backed vintage playing card replicas or copies that her mom can journal on. So there's a pocket up top, pocket in the middle. Oh, and then there's a couple more ephemera. Another British vintage wildflower cigarette card from Kay's Vintage, either Kay's Vintage or from Norway. I think this original book, Chatterbox, but I just love the little orator because my niece is a little chatterbox. This, I think, came from Donna Morgan. Picture she included in her Happy Mail. Or maybe she got that from Ruby and Pearl's digital kit. But it's her first communion, I think. We're backed with cardstock so that my niece can scribble, or her brother. So this photo could actually be journaled on or replaced with my niece's. The vintage pocket square, linen pocket square that I got on eBay. I was going to make it a full page, but it just looked really sweet with a little woven hand crocheted lace there. Just went with this page, this cotton paper from India, and then another vintage check or ledger receipt. This one is an American company, so it can come out just to make it easier to put things in. It can come out. You could put book pages or scraps in there. This is a book plate from Chatterbox book, but I just loved it with the little girl and her doll for her. I hope she does learn French and Spanish right away, and any other language she wants. So this is a full page pocket, and I think this is the very back. Oh, it is. This is a coffee filter bag envelope and pocket that I got from Sue Olson, her website or her Etsy site. I added this mini coffee stain paper envelope and put a little orange milk bottle or drink bottle top in there. And Sue Olson, I've been saving this for maybe 2 or 3 years. So sweet, pink bicycle, and it has this journaling card included that she made on coffee stain paper and stamps. That's probably a napkin as well, the bicycle. And then a little bit of a guest check to journal on, pink. And then I put more khadi paper scraps in case my niece and nephew want to paint or sketch or draw. By the time I went to kindergarten, I was already writing and spelling and doing basic math. My mom liked to home preschool us. Here's the front page of that Lombard Street carbon copy that you saw that was blank. But I love that pop of orange because it picks up on this little French orange tag. Orange and pink to me, I just love. It's like orange and strawberry sherbet together. Here is a book cover from the Chatterbox book, that antique book. I purchased it for $25 for the whole book because it has hundreds of these book plates in here and that thick paper, antique paper. I topped it with some of Sam Poole's antique trim. A little cluster up there just because I loved how it looked. But there's the title, American Chatterbox, and the last little piece of French wallpaper from Ruby and Pearl XO. It's old and brittle. Here's the back pocket, back tuck actually, using Ruby and Pearl XO's green garden butterflies that you've been seeing throughout the book, and some of the journaling cards from a couple of her kits. I don't remember if this is part of that same green garden. It's just printed to some coffee stained paper. And this is from her Bohemian one. Now I love this flower because I love reds and maroons. You'll actually see this in the wine tasting journal I'm making right now, but I had to include it just because of the greens, and I love it. That first book plate page or title cover page from the original book. In Ruby and Pearl, they like to do the little clipboard clip so that you can put scraps and other pages. So there's more of this French schoolwork in the purple pen and ink, pink ink, just because I love their writing. Math booklets. I have some of these pages in Ruby and Pearl's journal that she purchased from me. I think the Bobbsey Twins book, where I did some hand stitching just to keep some of the math pages together. But I like these little mathematical equations and basic numbering workbook pages. I actually loved working on these as a kid. And then a little pile of vintage ledger papers, also from the linen pantry box that I purchased from the UK, just so that her mom can write notes throughout the journal. They wrap it in French newspaper. This one had an embroidery of a baby's blanket. So I actually lined the back book page or book cover of the chatterbox with it, as well as this French pink linen paper that I received from Aline. And because my little hole punches were imperfect and because I didn't want to do any paste covering or coverage on here, I left it as is. I cleaned it up just to remove any random dirt, dust stains. Put a little floating floret fabric piece here over next to these flowers. I forget what they're called. They're not carnations, but they're related to carnations. And some of the British ledger or British linen, just to give these holes a little bit of strength, since she'll probably be returning it a lot potentially. But if she does want to turn it from the left as a left-hander, she can do that. And you could just turn these so that the little end notches are always pointing towards the bottom because of the bangs. And how can you not include this little boy, those bangs in this book? And then the trim will go with her in case she wants to decorate any of the pages. Okay. And this one I will keep because of this little baby. It's too cute. Maybe I'll do a Mother's Day journal. But anyway, so that is the journal for my niece. Her first birthday is next month, October. And I hope her mom lets her scribble, write, sketch, and include some of her memories in here. And I hope she has fun with it. And maybe when she turns 30 or 50, she can look back through it and remember who made it for her. So anyway, thank you, all of you who have influenced me or that I've purchased journals from, trying to get back to normal life. Thank you, Jibid, for your beautiful journal called Dyer's Daughter. I've been wanting that for a couple years now, so I just made my own for my niece. And I hopefully will see everybody soon. Thank you.